My wife didn't know I knew about her trip with her boss. That's the part that changed everything. Not the trip itself, not even the betrayal underneath it, but the fact that I knew, had known for 8 weeks, and every single morning I woke up beside her, made her coffee, asked about her day, kissed her before she left for the hospital. I was carrying that knowledge alone like a stone pressed flat against my chest where she used to rest her head. My name is Carter Jimmy, and I want to tell you something nobody tells you about the moment a marriage ends. It doesn't end with a fight. It doesn't end with screaming or thrown plates or a door slammed so hard the frame splits. The ones that really end, the ones that carve something permanent out of you, those end quietly. They end with a forehead kiss, a taxi pulling from a curb, and a man standing in his own doorway understanding that the woman inside that rolling luggage had already left long before she packed a single thing. That was the morning Sterila left for her vacation. She was radiant. Not the radiance of a woman grateful for rest. I knew that version of her, and God help me, I had loved that version of her completely. This was different. This was the radiance of anticipation, the glow of something coming toward her. She wore the blue dress she'd bought 3 weeks earlier, the one whose receipt I'd found folded in the back of a kitchen drawer and said absolutely nothing about. She wore the new perfume, deliberate, expensive, the kind you only wear when you want one specific person to notice. She stood in the hallway of our home, one hand resting on her luggage handle, and she smiled at me the way an actor smiles at a camera they know is rolling. "I'll call you tonight," she said. "I know," I said. I kissed her on the forehead. I held the door open. I watched the taxi move down our street and disappear around the corner, and I stood in the open doorway one extra moment, the morning air, the sound of a neighbor's gate, ordinary life refusing to pause for any of this, before I walked back inside and sat down at the kitchen table. My laptop was already open. The folder on the screen was labeled Arcline Legal, Divorce Proceedings. I had opened it the night before and read every page twice. My lawyer Namdi had prepared it with the precision I'd asked for. Clean, fair, airtight. I hadn't pressed send yet, not because I wasn't certain. I had been certain for 8 weeks. I hadn't pressed send because I needed to sit in this kitchen one final time in the house we had built together across 5 years and let the full weight of what I was about to do settle into my bones completely. I felt it. Then I closed the laptop, stood up, and made my coffee. She was on her way to a resort with her boss. She would return in 5 days to an empty house and a letter with her name written on the envelope in my handwriting, and this, every last piece of it, began not with a confrontation, but with a folded itinerary I pulled from a pocket she forgot she had. Please, before I continue, kindly like, share, and subscribe for more interesting stories. I want to be precise about this because it matters. I was not snooping. I need you to understand that before anything else, because the kind of man I am, the kind of man I had always been inside that marriage, was not a man who went through his wife's things looking for evidence of a life she was hiding. I was not that man. I became a man who knew things, yes, but I became that man by accident on an ordinary Tuesday, doing exactly what my wife had asked me to do. She called me from the hospital at 2:30 in the afternoon, her voice tight with the particular panic of someone who has just remembered something critical at the worst possible moment. Her medical license renewal documents. The deadline was that same day, the folder was in her laptop bag, and I was home, and could I please find it and photograph every page and send it to her email immediately? I said yes. I walked to the bedroom, I picked up the bag, I unzipped it. Wrong pocket. My hand found paper before my brain registered what I was reaching for, and I unfolded it the way you unfold anything, automatically, without ceremony, because it was just paper in a bag and I was in a hurry. Then my eyes found the header and everything in me went very, very still. Coastal Haven Resort and Spa. Premium oceanfront suite, 2 guests. Reservation name, A. Voss. Check-in and check-out dates printed cleanly beneath it. I read those dates twice. They matched, word for word, the hospital wellness retreat Sterila had told me about 2 weeks earlier, the mandatory one. The one she had described as boring. Team-building exercises, administrative workshops, Honestly, just a lot of sitting in conference rooms, Carter. Nothing exciting. The one she had mentioned so casually across the dinner table that I had nodded and asked if she wanted me to pack her the good toiletries bag. I stood in our bedroom holding that paper, and I became aware, absurdly, of the sounds around me. A car alarm going off somewhere down the road, a child laughing in the compound next door, a television in someone's apartment above us playing an afternoon program. Life proceeding without the slightest acknowledgement of what I was holding in my hands. I folded the paper back exactly as I had found it. I returned it to the wrong pocket. I zipped the bag. I found the correct pocket, retrieved the license renewal folder, photographed every page, and sent it to her email. Then I called her back. "Found it," I said. My voice was steady, practiced, surgical in a way that frightened me slightly. "Sending now." "You're a lifesaver," she said. "I love you, babe." "I know," I said. I hung up, and for the first time in 7 years of marriage, Carter Jimmy began to plan. Nobody at Sterila's graduation party knew the watch on my wrist was a fake. I bought it at a bus station market for 800 naira, a plastic thing with a chrome finish that caught light the way cheap things do, convincingly from a distance. I wore it because I had nothing else. My father's watch, the real one, a modest mechanical piece he had worn every single day of his adult life, the only inheritance he left me, was on someone else's wrist across the city by then. I had sold it 6 days before the graduation to cover the final gap in Sterila's tuition. I told her the hospital had processed a merit grant. She believed me because she wanted to believe me, and because I said it the same way I said everything, quietly, without drama, without asking for anything in return. I had worked 3 jobs for 6 years to get her to that stage. Mornings at the logistics depot, evenings doing electrical installations across the city, weekends driving private deliveries. I had withdrawn my own engineering certification enrollment in year 1, redirected every saved kobo toward her future, and told myself it was love. Standing at the edge of her graduation photograph, clapping, wearing a fake watch, I still believed that completely. The night I found the itinerary, something shifted in me that never shifted back. I did not confront her. I want to be clear about that. I chose silence the way a surgeon chooses a scalpel, deliberately, because I understood instinctively that what I did next would define not just the end of this marriage, but the terms on which I rebuilt everything after it. So I watched instead. I paid attention with the kind of focus I had been pouring into the wrong places for years. She changed her phone password that same week, first time in 7 years of marriage. She told me it was hospital protocol, patient data security. I nodded. She started leaving for the gym at 6 in the morning, though she had never once been a morning person in all the years I had known her. She bought that expensive perfume, and she began asking me about my schedule with a casualness that was slightly too careful, mapping my movements the way you map a territory you are planning to leave. I said nothing. I opened a folder on my laptop instead, called Thomas Vale, and told my business partner it was time to accelerate everything. Dr. Aldrich Voss was 41, divorced, and the chief of medicine at Grandview Private Hospital, and he was dangerous not because he was a bad man, but because he was a precise one. He met Sterila during her final clinical rotation, and he did something nobody around her had thought to do. He asked her what she actually wanted, not how her studies were going. Not when we were having children. What did she want her life to look like? What did the room smell like in that future? Who was in it? She was 27 and exhausted and carrying weight nobody around her could see, and that question cracked something open in her that she never fully closed again. He was careful. He never rushed. He replaced the space I occupied not with romance immediately, but with presence. With being seen in a way she had convinced herself she was getting from me but wasn't, or perhaps had stopped needing from me, which is a different and more honest thing. By her final semester, he was covering her last tuition installment. She accepted it. She told me it was a merit grant. She told herself it wasn't a transaction. She was wrong on both counts. I started packing on Wednesday morning, 4 days before she came home. I moved through the house slowly, the way you move through a place you are memorizing rather than leaving, running my hand along the kitchen counter, pausing in the doorway of the bedroom, standing at the window where we used to drink coffee on Sunday mornings before everything quietly became something else. I packed only what was mine. I was meticulous about this. My clothes, my tools, my notebooks, my hard drives, the wooden box that was empty now but still belonged to me. Nothing jointly purchased, nothing that was hers. I left her medical textbooks stacked in the corner. I left her favorite mug on the dish rack. I left the spice rack she had arranged herself and the throw pillows she had picked out and the framed art she had chosen for the living room wall. I left her world exactly intact. I only removed myself from it. The movers finished on Thursday afternoon. I stood in the empty bedroom and listened to my own footsteps echo. Then I walked to the kitchen, placed the envelope under her favorite mug so it would not fall, and posted the keys through the mail slot on my way out. They hit the floor inside with a sound like a full stop. Thomas called me on a Friday night 3 months before the vacation, and what he told me rearranged everything I thought I understood about what was happening in my marriage. He had been at a dinner party at Aldrich's home. They had gone to university together, a connection I hadn't known about, a detail that made the whole architecture of it feel suddenly more suffocating. Someone at the table had asked Sterila about me. "What does your husband do?" And she had paused. Thomas said the pause was the worst part, that small hesitation before she composed herself and answered. "He drives deliveries," she said. "He does what he can." The table had laughed softly. She had laughed with them. Thomas told me he hadn't known what to say, so he had said nothing that evening, but he couldn't carry it anymore. He was sorry. He should have called sooner. I told him to go home to his family. I sat at my desk for a long time after that call. My mother's voice arrived uninvited into the silence, something she had said the night she met Sterila on the drive home. "Love that only flows one direction doesn't stay love for long, Carter. It becomes debt, and nobody likes their creditor." I had laughed at her then. The night before the movers came, I cooked jollof rice with fried plantain and grilled chicken. Sterila's favorite meal. The one I had made every year on her birthday without being asked. The one she used to say was the one thing I did better than any restaurant in the city. I cooked it entirely from memory, the tomato base, the bay leaves, the exact ratio she preferred, and I set one plate at the kitchen table and sat down and ate alone. I remembered the night she got her acceptance letter, the way she screamed, the way I spun her around the kitchen and felt, with complete certainty, that I was exactly where I was supposed to be. I remembered every birthday, every exam she passed, every night she came home wrecked with exhaustion and found a warm plate waiting. I remembered selling my father's watch. I remembered withdrawing my enrollment. I remembered every job, every early morning, every late night, every kobo redirected toward the future she is living right now. Then I remembered, he drives deliveries. He does what he can. I cleared the plate, washed it, dried it, set it back in the cabinet, turned off the kitchen light, and sat down to write the letter. Day 2 of the retreat, Sterila sent me a voice note. I was outside supervising the movers when my phone buzzed. I stepped away from the truck and put in one earbud and pressed play. Her voice came through, warm, unhurried, the sound of someone genuinely relaxed for the first time in months. She said she missed me. She said I had been right about her needing the trip. She said she would see me Sunday and that she loved me, and in the background I could hear the ocean and wind and the ambient ease of a luxury resort on a weekday afternoon. I listened to it once. I stood there by the moving truck with the morning sun on my face and her voice in my ear and the last of my boxes being loaded behind me. I listened to it a second time. I thought about the man who had spent 6 years working 3 jobs so that the woman in this voice note could become who she was. I thought about the wooden box with no watch inside. I thought about a dinner table where people laughed. Then I pressed delete. I walked back to the truck. "That's everything," I told the lead mover. I took one last look at the front of the house. Then I got in my car and drove toward the rest of my life without looking in the mirror once. She put her key in the door on a Sunday afternoon, and the silence hit her like a wall. I wasn't there to see it, but I have imagined it enough times that it feels like memory. Sterila stepping through the front door with her luggage and her tan, and the quiet guilt she'd been folding smaller and smaller all weekend, already rehearsing the version of herself she would perform when she got inside. Present, affectionate, better. She had decided on the flight home that she would be better. Then she stepped into the living room. The couch was gone. The bookshelves, gone. The photographs on the wall, gone, leaving pale rectangular ghosts where the frames had hung, clean outlines of a life that had been there and been deliberately removed. She walked to the bedroom. Her bed remained. It was hers, she had chosen it, but his side was bare, the closet open, his half emptied with a care that was somehow more devastating than destruction would have been. Not robbed, not violated, chosen. She walked to the kitchen. Her mug sat on the counter. Beneath it, an envelope. Her name on the front in my handwriting. She sat down on the kitchen floor, her back against the cabinet, her luggage still in the open doorway, and she stayed there for a very long time before she reached for it. The letter said only what was true, and that was the most devastating thing about it. Sterila. I am not writing this in anger. I want you to know that first, because I know that's what you'll look for, a reason to dismiss it. I found the hotel itinerary 2 months ago. I have known since February. I said nothing because I needed to be certain I wasn't making a mistake. I am certain. I'm not writing to punish you. I'm writing because I respect you enough for the truth. You said at a dinner party that I drive deliveries and do what I can. I'm not angry you said it. I'm sad it was what you believed, because it means I failed to make you see me. Or perhaps you always saw me this way and I missed it. I worked 3 jobs for 6 years so you could become the doctor you are. I sold my father's watch for your tuition. I gave up my own education willingly. I don't regret any of it. You are an excellent doctor. That is real. What is also real? Arcline Electrical and Infrastructure Solutions. Look it up. The divorce papers are with my lawyer. I left your things exactly as they were. I took nothing that wasn't mine. I hope you find what you're looking for. I genuinely hope it looks the way you imagined. Carter. She read it 4 times. By the 4th, her hands were shaking too hard to hold the paper straight. 6 months later, Sterila typed his company name into a search bar and sat down very slowly in her chair. She was chief resident now at Grandview. Aldrich had made sure of that. He was attentive, generous, called her brilliant in front of colleagues, made reservations at good restaurants. She had what she thought she'd wanted. Most nights she couldn't explain why wearing it felt like a coat that fit perfectly but wasn't hers. The website loaded clean and professional. A business publication article sat at the top of the results. She read the headline once, then read it again. Arcline secures multi-billion federal infrastructure contract. CEO Carter Jimmy leads, fastest growing electrical firm in the region. There was a photograph. Carter in a dark suit at a press briefing, standing with his shoulders back and his eyes level, carrying a quiet authority she recognized immediately and understood. With a cold and arriving clarity she had never once stopped to look for in 7 years of living beside him. She had looked at him that entire time and never actually seen him. Aldrich appeared in her doorway, smiling, mentioning a reservation. She closed the laptop. "Give me a minute," she said. He nodded and left. She sat alone, her phone in her hand. Carter's contacts still there. She had never deleted it. She stared at his name for a long time. Then she put the phone face down, picked up her coat, and walked out. She didn't hold Aldrich's hand at dinner. She didn't sleep when she got home. Carter never called. He had a company to run.